Hey, welcome to the Art Condition Podcast, a weekly show that will discuss the business, community, and often undiscussed stress and mental health concerns of being a professional artist, or even a serious hobbyist. I'm Joby. I've been in the tattoo and illustration professions for 25 years. My co-host is Moose, a data analyst, social media manager, and art agent. If you enjoy the content, please consider visiting the Patreon page in the show notes to help support the effort. Or if that's not an option, please like, subscribe, leave a good review, or just share with your friends. And definitely go visit the links of our guests on this episode. Thanks for listening, and have a great day. This week we are talking to Flo Young. Flo is a concept artist and art director at a startup indie game studio. Flo has had a lot of experience wearing a lot of different hats in the concept art world, as well as having worked for a short time as a freelance artist. This means she has a lot of valuable insight for newcomers and veterans alike. So we start by talking a bit about her career, its many twists and turns, and the lessons from her experience. We also talk a lot about what the inside of the industry is like, and what the future might hold, both in terms of working conditions and the types of technologies that will define the game development industry in years to come. This is a really fun conversation. Flo's enthusiasm is infectious, and it's always a great joy to talk to someone who just really loves what they do. Let's listen. Well, hello, Flo. Thank you so much for coming over and hanging out with us for a little bit today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
We're going to talk about a lot of cool, fun stuff. But first, the most interesting, tell us about you and the history of Flo Young.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked me, and I'm so glad I prepared for this. So here is what I've written down. Hi, I'm Flo, or Floop, or Poop, but only Moose gets to call me Poop. I am known as Flotapop on Twitch. I like to draw and paint and play in 3D. I started in animation industry. I also worked in games and also theme parks. And now I'm making a mobile game.
So how did you get into art? You know, what's your background in how you came into art, how you got really like hooked and grabbed by it, how it sunk your teeth in and wouldn't let go?
So my earliest memories is watching anime. So I think it's safe to say that anime is what really got me into drawing. So from the beginning, whenever I could open or whenever I could hold a pencil, that's when I started drawing. So I guess I just haven't stopped drawing since. So yeah, I think some of the first animes I've watched were a lot of kids animes that came from Japan, but they were dubbed in Chinese because I watched a lot of Chinese TV growing up. It's just whatever my parents would put on TV. And also a lot of Ghibli films. So that was a huge inspiration for me. Very gorgeous environments, really great characters, and the stories were just so rich, and magical and fantastical, and that's what I like the most.
But Ghibli films don't hold a candle to Speed Racer, am I right?
No. Yeah. I think what I also liked was Sailor Moon. I was pretty obsessed with that growing up. And then came Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, all the good stuff. Hunter x Hunter was a big one. Yeah, I mean, I could just sit all day and list every anime I've watched, but
we could just turn this into an anime podcast.
Just tell us
sure. All about them.
Well, I'm curious. You want to know about the current anime I'm watching? Sorry. Anyways, next question.
Yeah. No. What are you watching now?
Okay, so currently I'm watching this anime called Zombieland Saga, and it's an idol anime. So it's about a group of girls who sing and dance and perform, which is not my usual anime, but this one has such a good story, and all the characters are so great. And they go into how each girl has died and became a zombie. And they come from different periods of history in Japanese history. So that's like one of the biggest interests of mine. And yeah, it's just really wholesome and it's about friendship. It's a really great watch. I highly recommend it.
That actually sounds really cool. I would check that out. Do they do actual performances? Like, is there music written for it? Where they're like performing and stuff?
Yeah, so each episode has a different theme. It's uh what was I gonna say? Yeah, so they have a song for each episode, and they have different themes. So the first one was heavy metal, and then they have a rock one, and then they have a pop one, and then they have like a historical Japanese themed one. It's really nice, and the animation is very sweet. The production is very high. Usually, when I see my roommate watch idol animes, they put 3D animation in it, and it's just like a little robotic, and they cut it in a certain way to kind of cheat the animation. But this one, they put a lot of heart into it, and it's very beautifully done.
I've never heard the term idol anime. What is that?
It's like an idol, someone who is a star and they sing and perform on stage.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking, I was like IDLE or IDOL. I know. Okay,
Yeah,
I got it.
IDOL.
I got you. Well, what was the connection point between anime into, oh my god, I love art so much, I want to do this for a living, and then, oh, here's how I can actually do that.
Okay, so anime is what started me drawing. How I started drawing. So I just wanted to draw pretty pictures that looked like anime. So just started copying anime style. Um, I did a lot of copying. So I copied the characters, I copied the backgrounds, and I just did that over and over again because it was really fun. I never thought it would be part of my profession. As I was growing up, I always thought I was going to be an architect because maybe that way I could uh, put some drafting skills and engineering skills together because I was also interested in physics and science in general. So I'm like, yeah, I'm totally going to be an architect until the final year of high school where you have to determine the rest of your life at that point.
Yeah, go
And
figure.
I saw, yeah, right. My parents were not happy. But yeah, the final year of high school, there was a career festival where a lot of schools had a booth to show what kind of programs they had. So we had a college um, version, and that's where I saw the school that I went to. It's called Max the Mutt Animation School. It's a little bit of a funny name, but they showcased all of their students' artwork. There was a lot of paintings, traditional paintings like watercolors, gouache, oil paintings, and they had different programs like illustration, sequential illustration for comic books, and they had animation. They had 2D animation and 3D animation. And their newest program, starting that, or they didn't start that year, but it was a pretty new program when I found out about it, called concept art. And so they described it as doing design art for film, video games, and animation. So at that point, I had no idea that that was a career path I could take. And it looked like exactly something that I would enjoy a lot. So last minute, I'm like, Mom and Dad, this is it. This is the school I want, nothing else. Even though I've applied to several universities and architecture programs. Um, but yeah, my heart was pretty set on that school, and it was a good time.
Sorry if I missed it. What school was it?
It's called Max the Mutt Animation School of Design. I don't know. They extended the name. Oh God, that's not professional. I should have.
It's fine.
Yeah, this is in Toronto, by the way, in Canada.
Are you normally this impulsive, or was this like out of character for you to make a big decision like this? What to go to school for on a whim?
Okay, so I usually have a plan, but if something seems right, even though it's not in that same direction, if I feel very strongly about it, I will definitely go for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
Yeah, so this school is called Max the Mutt College of Animation, Art, and Design. That's the full name.
Why do they have to have such long names? Like they all love having super long. I don't know. It's I don't.
They
get
used to be called Studio M, which I much prefer, but it's not my choice, not my decision.
And the famous one in California that I can never remember the full name of either. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. So you did like a 4-year program in animation, and you thought that animation was going to be the thing, or was it concept art at the time?
Yeah, I chose concept art because I felt like animation was too involved. I just like to paint and make pretty pictures. I had no desire to make it move, although I think it's a very cool thing to do. I prefer to make still images.
Yeah, fair enough. So knowing a little bit about your background, I know that you've had a like very wide ranging career, and you have dabbled in animation a little bit, right? So that, well, tell us when you came out of college, like what did you start doing? Did you go right into a concept art field?
No, I worked at the beer store for a little bit.
Okay. Well, how did you start getting into the actual like art and design part?
Yeah. So I didn't work at the beer store for long because I got fired, and also I got an offer at a animation studio. So one of my teachers from college was working at a studio called Nelvana, which is the oldest standing animation studio in Canada. And she was art directing a new show. It's called The Fresh Beat Band of Spies. So they do a lot of children's animation, and that was the very first project I worked on. So I feel like I was pretty lucky to have a teacher remember me and contact me after graduating and offer me this position. And I got to work on the backgrounds. So I was a background painter.
When did it start transitioning into other areas? Like how I'm tempted for you to just be like, okay, give me like a play by play of the entire career history, but maybe give me like, some of the highlights. You've worked in animation, you've worked in games, and then you've done, like you said, background, you've done concepting art. Between like when you left college to where you are now, what are some of like the big beats that you've hit along the way?
Okay, sure. So I was a background painter for a very long time. I've been working for 7 years now, so I think 5 to 6 of those years, I worked as a background painter for animation. Excuse me. So I did a little bit of layout as well for animation, which is drawing the backgrounds for the background painters to paint. Uh, so, and then as I was doing background painting, I got a freelance offer to do some work on a Ubisoft IP. So I actually worked on Starlink, and I worked on the cinematic portions of the video game. So what happened was that Ubisoft had hired a animation studio, which was literally across the street from their studio, and that animation studio uh, offered me the freelance position to work on some of the designs in the cinematic. So that was how I started in the video game industry. That part of my career was very tough because I worked a full-time job in background painting and I was doing freelance, so I was barely getting any sleep. But somehow I made it through, and I worked 8 months on Starlink.
That's pretty awesome. That's a pretty great gig to get under your belt, right? I'm pretty quickly.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just something I couldn't turn down, and that's why I did my full-time job and did the freelance on top of that. Um, so yeah, after that, I got very like if I have to be honest, I was depressed for a little bit because I knew my heart wasn't into background painting. It was a lot of color by number. And there are a lot of artists who are just happy doing that. There's nothing wrong about that kind of work. I think it's really great. But for me, my heart was very into design. So I wanted to become a concept artist. And so when my contract ended after several years of background painting, I just didn't renew it. And I started looking for more concept art jobs. And that was when I got picked up by the theme park design firm that I've listed. Uh, so, yeah, I started doing concept art for theme parks, which was a very fun thing to do, I found, because I worked very closely with architects, which was one of my interests growing up. And I saw what they did and I looked at their schematics and I learned a lot about building materials and how things were built, which really fun for my head. And that also got me into started working in 3D. So what they had me do was learn SketchUp on the job. And I built very rudimentary or sometimes I was given 3D models from the architects, and then I would position a camera, uh, render that scene, and put it into Photoshop and paint over it. Uh, and also before that, I had taken a matte painting course, so that also helped with photo bashing a lot of materials. And uh, yeah, that was pretty fun. That's actually how I got started doing 3D and implementing that in my process.
Yeah, the theme
And
park part of your history is something that I was actually really curious about. I mean, all of the video game design stuff, that's all good and well, but tell me more about the theme parks.
theme parks, yeah.
Yeah, what's involved in the concept work for a theme park? What is it that you're designing? What do they want to see as part of that development process? Why do they need a concept artist?
Right. So, one of our biggest projects was to make a Lionsgate theme park. So, a lot of their movies were what we themed the park after. So what needed to be designed were the shops, the restaurants, the queue lines were a big part of it because you don't want to just stand in a boring old queue line. You need something interesting to look at while you're waiting, sometimes hours, to get on a ride. So that's mainly what we did. I did a lot of interiors of coffee shops, restaurants, gift shops were a huge one. Yeah, and we got jobs doing water parks as well. So that was pretty fun. At one point, we did a sci-fi looking water park, which is really, really fun. I made a little spaceship for the DJ or something like that. It was pretty cool.
It's so fascinating that there's so much work to be done. I mean, I can see like in the initial liftoff, of a theme park, but that's not something that you hear about getting built every day. Like theme park. Like how many theme parks can they be making? So is that like something? Is that like steady work? Like if you can get into that, is that something that you would be able to work in indefinitely?
I'm not quite sure. Well, I know in Toronto there's 2 firms. I don't know if there's more, but there's one big firm in Toronto, and then the firm that I worked off was kind of a branch off of that firm. And a lot of the work we did were overseas. So the Lionsgate one was supposed to be built somewhere in Asia, but it never got built because there's a little bit of a corruption going on there. There's a lot of money laundering in construction apparently. So one of our biggest projects was canceled because of that. So yeah, I think how we got some of these jobs were just through connections because there's not a lot of theme park design firms in general. A lot of our connections are through other companies in California, also other major cities in the US. And so sometimes if they need help with the amount of work they get from a client, then they would ask for our help, which I find is mostly the case in any kind of industry in Canada. There's not a lot of Canadian made content, so a lot of our service is services to US companies. So I think that played a major role on how I got all these weird jobs here and there. Yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Oh yeah,
Just a
definitely.
small bit of trivia to throw in there. In regard to the corruption, I forget where I heard this from, but you can basically measure the amount of mob activity in a city by how much it costs to pour a square foot of concrete there. So it's really high in Las Vegas. It's really high in New York City, for example. So
Well, there you go. The more you know.
That's fascinating, actually.
Yeah, I learned a lot on that job.
Yeah, that you can learn about the corruption in or related tangential to the industry that you're actually working in while you have that job is that means it's got to be bad. That means it's got to be like really bad because people aren't keeping their mouth shut. They're just like, yeah, whatever. This is drug money from Honduras, and we're gonna put it in this theme park, no problem.
Yeah.
No FBI raids. So you were saying that you started learning 3D there. Did that really grab you? Were you like, oh man, this is the next level. This is what I want to do, or were you still kind of like more attached to 2D drawing and painting?
Yeah. So part of my 4-year program in college, we got to dabble in Maya. So I think Maya and ZBrush. So when I got to do that in school, my brain was like on fire. I really enjoyed doing that kind of stuff. Even though at points I don't understand what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. So learning 3D in the theme park design firm, that uh, was really great for me. I think SketchUp was really fun because it's a CAD program. You can literally just sketch on the plane and extrude, and it just was very easy for me to understand. Um, Comparing that to Maya, and then after SketchUp, I actually was encouraged to learn Blender. So that is the first time I started using Blender for my work. And I also dabbled in rendering my models in Octane. And I almost was about to learn Revit, which is an architecture program, but I was let go.
From the theme park gig?
Yeah, it's just not enough projects coming in at that point. So
Oh, I was hoping that there was something involving a mob boss. That was going to be the end of this one.
I wish that was the case, or do I? But that was actually how I got into more freelancing. That's when you and Moose and all the other artists on Twitch started the fantasy artists on Reddit. So yeah.
And I remember you were the one that I think I'd spitballed like $25 an hour or something like that, and you were like, "Could we please make it 30?" And we've been sticking with that since. Even though it's really weird how like just that $5 makes some people so uncomfortable to charge that difference. Like they think they will get no work at that number. And then since then we've had some artists like move up to like closer to 50 to 75, and they're up there. When just at the start, 30 sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I'm so glad that that worked out because that was exactly what I was aiming for at the time because I was just sick of the low paying jobs that I kept getting. So I really wanted to see if I could start freelancing and earning a little bit more with 30 an hour. Um, yeah.
And then there's also the bit of the copyright stuff. So if you're actually producing it for a client that's intending to use it, it's different from producing homebrew content for for the D&D character or whatever. But a lot of people don't put that into account when they're coming up with the prices, right?
Yeah, that is very important to know because if they're going to be using it for their product and they're going to be earning money off of your work, you should definitely include that in your price.
We were lucky that we knew a few like actual professionals who could like make some suggestions like that and save us from doom. I wanted to ask a little bit more about 3D. There's so many 3D modeling platforms out there. Do you keep up? You've kind of dabbled in a lot of them. There's a few questions here. Is there one that you like really stick with? You're like, this is the one. And also like, how do you know like which one you're gonna need to know or gonna want to use?
Okay, so I always advocate for Blender. I think for any artists out there, I think nowadays especially, they highly recommend Blender because not only is it free, it also is a open source program. So there are tons and tons of resources for it online. And you can easily find YouTube videos. You can find different scripts to help you with your work. So, like recently, I really didn't want to start making buildings for my concept art, but it was required of me to come up with all these different looking buildings. So I went ahead and looked for a script that will um, uh, procedurally build buildings, help me build buildings in Blender, and I found a free one. And I just it was so easy to just download the script and put it in Blender and start using it. And it came with a little YouTube video on how to use it. And yeah, Blender is great. If you're gonna start on any 3D program, start with Blender.
Yeah, I recently just found, I can't remember now, putting my foot in my mouth, I can't remember exactly where I saw it, but it was some tutorial about constructing height maps, like using Photoshop to make grayscale height maps, and then somehow transmitting that to the 3D platform that can read the different grayscales as different heights, and then you'll just be able to like instantly build. Well, not instantly, but it goes from like these black and white
Almost
variations,
yeah.
black and white variations, to this like awesome like crazy cityscape that you can then like manipulate and move. And yeah, that there's so many, and it seems like they're always coming up with like new and interesting ways to make things like super easy. It's getting to the point where like why not know it? It's like just getting easier and easier to use. The Blender thing is interesting because it's free, but then there's also this sort of like wall between Blender and the greater industries where 3D is being used, because everybody's so stuck on ZBrush, and it's like hard to make that transition. But at the same time, it's like, God, why not? Like, why are you gonna pay $700 for your license versus this like free program?
Yeah, I totally understand that. For me, this is how I think about it. If you're just interested in doing concept art and having 3D as a sort of a supporting thing to help you jumpstart your painting, I would just start with Blender. I maybe ZBrush if you have the money, but with programs like ZBrush, Maya, all the expensive ones like 3ds Max, I think that's a pretty big one too. Uh, I would only get into that if you want to be a 3D artist, if you want to actually do models for the industry, if you want to actually be a surface artist for 3D studios. That is the only time I would get into those kinds of programs. If you want to do 3D animation, that's when I would go into Maya. Yeah, but for concept art, use whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, if the industry space that you're working in doesn't absolutely require a particular platform. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So you were working in a studio, or in a kind of like you had a reliable gig, and then that ended. So you're like, okay, gonna go freelance. What made you want to try freelance though, as opposed to trying to get a new studio gig or a new reliable paycheck, so to speak?
Honestly, I did freelance to just sustain myself until I could find another studio job. So yeah, money, being able to pay my bills. But also, I really liked D&D, and I really liked doing character art for other people who love D&D. So I really liked the fact that you guys had made the fantasy artist group, and I thought that was such a great idea because I love drawing my own D&D characters. So I thought that would be really fun to extend that to other fans.
What level of success did you find in your freelancing versus in your studio work?
For freelance, I got quite a few clients, like just a handful, I think, maybe one or two client per month when I was doing the fantasy artist thing with you guys. Uh, so I think that was pretty successful in my eyes. I don't know. I had the bar pretty low because I didn't want to like crush my expectations too much.
I think it
But
comes down
also,
to marketing, right? Like if you had
yeah,
gone balls to the wall on plastering your work everywhere that you could possibly put it, you could have got a lot more. But then you would have been in Blake's situation where he ended up with a list of 40 people on his wait list at
yeah,
all times, and maybe that wasn't what you were looking for.
yeah. No, I think because I consider myself as kind of a slow painter. I'm much slower than he is. So I think I was trying to consider how many clients I can manage as well. And also at the time, I had a little bit of leeway because I had moved back in with my parents. So my mom almost charged me rent, but thank goodness my dad intervened. That was super helpful. So the amount of clients was in my sweet spot, I think.
How long were you doing that before you found new work in a studio?
Um, I think I spent 7 months looking for a studio job. So I did 7 months of freelancing.
Is that a long time, or is that kind of? I don't. Well, I don't know if there's a way to guess like what the average is, but was it?
Yeah, it
What
really
was?
depends.
Mhm.
Yeah, it really depends. What I found was that it's kind of seasonal. Um, Especially in the indie game studios because oftentimes they would be prepping for a applying to grants, government grants. So usually that happens in the summertime, and once they get that grant, that is when they vamp up on hiring artists and other employees. So it's a little bit of a seasonal thing, but it's also very individual to the studio. Uh, for film, it's a little bit similar. Um, I don't know if they apply to grants or anything, but usually it depends on when they film uh, their stuff. And for animation, it yeah, it really depends on the studio and their scheduling. Uh,
Were
yeah.
you being super picky with which studios you were applying for, or were you doing more of a carpet bombing approach and applying to everything you found?
A little bit of both. So my target was I wanted a design job, so either concept art or visual development for animation. Um, I didn't apply to film all too much because I felt like uh, there was not a lot of design jobs for film in Toronto. Um, but I was proven wrong because I have several of my friends who do design for film in Toronto. But I think you have to like have really good connections for that.
That's how it always is, right? So you know.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Sorry, I lost track of the question.
I did too.
I think it was. Oh my God, is it happening to all three of us? No, no,
It
no,
did.
no, no,
Oh,
no.
I asked about the carpet
Oh,
bombing.
well, yeah,
Freelance.
picky. Were you being picky? Oh,
Oh,
Jesus.
right. Yeah. So I was being picky about what kind of job I'm applying to, but for in terms of company, I was just like doing this with my resume, just like throwing it out into the void. I mean, it felt like I was throwing it into the void, but I was throwing it at every studio I can find. And I was not picky about relocating either. So I was also, oh, bye, Moose. I
I'll
was
be back.
also applying to studios in the US um, and even a few in the UK.
The whole time were you just like, oh God, I hate freelancing. I need to get a job. Why can't I get it? Was it stressful, or were you like, it's cool. I live with my parents, and I'll draw someone's D&D character, NBD.
It was only stressful because I was living with my parents. So I was, oh God, I really need to leave this house. I can't stay here any longer.
Well, on that note, we have a special guest coming on. It's your parents.
Oh no. Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. Happy Father's Day. No, I think if I could, I really would live with my parents, but it was just mentally, I couldn't. Especially after living on my own for 9 years, just going back to that is not so great. I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but it was just, yeah, I won't go more into it.
No,
So,
I
were
get it.
you when you were carpet bombing for jobs at the companies that you wanted? Were you searching for relationships that you had in those studios, or were you strictly just applying for their drop boxes that had the application things for them?
A little bit of both. I think it was easy with LinkedIn to just keep applying to these jobs. But also, as I went along, I got some advice from my friends on how to contact their HR departments. And sometimes I would contact some of my friends who are in some studios I was interested. Like there's a Warner Brothers studio in Montreal that I was interested in, and I had asked to get their HR contact and like see if they're hiring and things like that.
A long time ago, when I was looking for a job, I started. I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, so I'll make it quick. I got advice from my Nana's friend who made a career out of helping people find work, and the takeaway message from me was, don't just go around asking people if they have a job, but rather ask people like for help, like advice. So people like feeling like they know stuff. So if you ask them like, hey, what would my skill set match in your industry, or hey, what job fit do you think I'm a fit for, rather than saying, hey, do you have a job? Because if you ask like questions like for their help, say, what am I a good fit for? They'll start like, it's basically they remove a wall and they let you in. But if you start with something saying, do you have work? Then they'll start like saying start with the wall, and then they make you climb over it in order to get past it.
I don't
Yeah,
think you.
that is very good advice. I've done stuff like that where I started a conversation with a question about their studio or their company, and then I'd follow up with, "Hey, do you think my style would match?" Just like those little things.
This is great advice. I don't think you've ever mentioned that before on the podcast. So is this like in lieu of sending an email that's like, "Hey, here's my portfolio. Do you have a gig?" It's literally just like, "Hey, can you talk to me for a second or give me some feedback on something?"
Yep, that's exactly how I got the job that I have now. I
Yeah,
sent out.
I don't think it's in lieu. I think I would do both. So if there's a job opening or like a job posting, definitely try to apply to that and have at least your name in their database. And then also contact their HR, or if you know someone who's art directing a project, um, contact them. Uh, just, yeah, try everything, do everything.
And you said that you wanted to focus on concept art or visual development. Were you looking more for 3D, or were you looking more for 2D, or both, either or?
Yeah, either or. And I got quite lucky with the previous job I was at. So I got picked up by a studio who was starting a 3D animated TV show. And it was for uh, it was not for children. It was a mature rated TV show, and it was a samurai versus zombies type of show, very gory, very fantastical, And God, I hate that word, fantastical. Fantasy. It's very fantasy. So I had a really great time working on that because that was actually when I really got into Blender. So a lot of I did visual development for that show. So the group that I worked with was very great. We bounced off ideas with each other very well, and we just got along. And everybody was doing Blender to Photoshop process, even though nobody has told us to do that. We just decided that this was a great way to kind of marry the 2D designs with what it will look like in 3D, which is the end point, the final look of the show. So that was a very great experience for me.
So I'm curious, what would you say are the benefits of working from Blender to 2D?
So again, like what I said about having the different angles that you can take from each shot. So like moving the camera, getting an up shot, rotating it, and getting the back shot. So you get a very good idea of what the final environment will look like in 3D space. But also, it just helps with perspective and like basic lighting, and it just speeds up the process quite a lot. Um, and at the same time, I found that I learned quite a bit uh, from doing 3D. So I think it helps me with lighting, especially. Um, and also just like being able to rotate what you're imagining in your head in a 3D space. I think that's very helpful.
So what about, I know very little about 3D, but I know there's something called rigging. So do you have to rig the characters so they move right, or do you just have them all in the T pose and just moving around the screen that way, or what's the
Right.
situation?
So rigging is a whole other beast. We have specialized people, or sorry, people who specialize in rigging, who do all these scripts themselves, and they have to rig it in a very particular way in order to have the character move uh, according to the script. So like uh, a character that's rigged for a fighting show is going to be rigged very differently for just like a very story heavy animation. So I think this is what I'm told. Correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any riggers out there, but there's very different ways of rigging something for a character. Before us concept artists, we don't really get the rig for the characters. So what I did was environment design, and all we had were the characters in T pose. Nowadays, the better practice is to have them in A pose because of the shoulder issue. Uh, and we just have them in our scenes for scale. So when you're working in 3D, scale is very, very important. If anything is just a little bit off, you can definitely see it very easily. So that's one thing that's very great about working in 3D for our concept arts, is to just keep everything consistent and see how well the characters live in your environment before passing on the designs to the 3D artists.
I feel like I never get a tight enough grasp on exactly like what concept art is, even though we've like interviewed a few concept artists and we've talked about it a bunch. Because it seems like there's always some subtleties between the way that it can get done. Like you're talking about using 3D to establish some lighting and create different perspectives and the environment and stuff. But then I've talked to other concept artists where it's just like they're they're doodling, or they're sketching, and lighting and perspective accuracy and proportions, all of that is out the window. Would be a waste of time. It's like, what are you doing? You're building this in Blender? No, we need this now, like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I I think it's very different from studio to studio and also from production to production. So I think if you have a team that works well with just interpreting very how do you say it? Impressionistic concept art, then that's great. If you can just pump out those paintings, then that's great. But for the previous job that I had, the visual development job, it was part of our job to really, really describe what this needs to look like in 3D for our 3D artists. So we had to be very precise with proportions. Lighting was a huge thing for us to solve as well. So when I look at concept art, for me anyways, it's problem solving. How is this going to look? How can we communicate this to our 3D artists so that we don't have to go back and forth and say, no, this is what I meant. And so if we could just eliminate that portion of communication, like if we can just get it right the first time or the second time or the third time instead of, the 20th iteration, then that's a huge win for the company. So yeah, it just really depends on the project and the team dynamic probably as well.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine too, you get pretty quick at shorthand in your 3D development as well. Like, you're not like doing like crazy intricate modeling and sculpting and stuff. A tangential side, what are the differences between concept art and visual development? Like, what would draw the distinction between those things?
I don't know. I think they're the same thing.
Oh, no.
It just might be that video games call it a concept art, while film calls it visual development.
Oh, okay.
Maybe. I know there's early concept art, and then there's the main portion of concept art where you're actually problem solving. So like early concept art, you're just sketching out ideas, just like throwing out ideas. And yeah, so visual development is more about problem solving, maybe. I don't know. I think they're interchangeable.
Or viz dev, if you prefer.
Viz dev.
Yeah, that's
cool way.
yeah, that's what we like to call it at the coffee shop.
So there's a small parallel in my field where people that want to start statisticians that want to be paid more money started calling themselves data scientists. So that they had an extra tier to go to, and they were able to go from however many dollars up to like 50% more or something like that.
Amazing.
So maybe viz dev is just the concept artist. Like, no, I'm not a concept artist. I'm a visual development artist.
And then if you want to get like top tier, you're a visual development consultant or a data scientist consultant. That's what
oh my god!
Yeah, you gotta throw that into your resume. That's a freebie.
That's what I need to aim for.
Consultant is when you're freelance, though.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe someone in chat or someone else has a better idea of what the difference is. But in my mind, I just feel like visual development and concept art is kind of the same thing.
If you know the difference, send me an email at artcondition.com. You'll win the grand prize. Hey. You mentioned a little aside about the kinds of work in Canada, and that stood out to me that you took the time to actually like make a little note of that when we were talking before the show. So what is in that makes you want to highlight that particular the types of work in Canada?
I just wanted to talk about because I had a little bit of frustration with the type of work I was getting in Toronto specifically. Uh, if you're able to get a job in film, because I know a lot of films are filmed in Toronto, then that is like one of the best, the one of the better jobs, I think. Uh, but other than that, it's a lot of preschool children's animation uh, work that you can find in Toronto, um, which isn't bad. But if you're someone like me who are interested in something higher in age, more mature, um, it's not really ideal. Though I do think the indie game uh, scene is kind of blowing up now in Toronto. Um, Montreal is a little bit better for that. They have many more game studios there. But when I was searching for a job in Toronto, a lot of the jobs I would get were just service jobs for US companies. So, and it's just not a lot of opportunities to move up in the ladder in your career. So, oftentimes they're just looking for lower paying jobs. Um, so that was sort of my issue that I came across with finding jobs here. Uh, what else did I want to say? Yeah, I think a big thing for us to do here is to maybe unionize. I know it's not a very popular idea, but it would be great to just have more Canadian content so that we could have better paying jobs and to have a bigger variety of creative jobs as well. So that's just really what I wanted to talk about.
What would unionization do in terms of being able to guarantee more work for Canadians?
It's just the part where you're feeling more secure in a current job to pursue a more creative project, or it would just also minimize the need to go into a lower paying job, say like VFX is a big one. So a lot of people are being paid very low for doing such a demanding job like matte painting. So maybe if we could again start making more Canadian, like local uh, projects, I think that would really bump up the economy and just have better paying jobs, benefits included, vacation, sick days, all the good stuff instead of just contract to contract.
I think the video game industry as a whole could benefit from that, not just the Canadian, because
Yeah.
whether it's CG Project Red or any Microsoft studio, they all are known for having short lifespans with their given project. Like as soon as the project's over, then they dump out a bunch of employees out into the market, and then they also rush for jobs, and then they get swooped up by their friends, hopefully, and then those that don't make it then are on a longer path to either finding something else to do, working independently, or roughing it.
Yeah, and that's happened time and time again in Toronto. Like I've seen two companies already who have gone bankrupt, and then a lot of their employees have been just like, they don't even get notifications. They just get a sign on the door. So they're walking to work and they see this sign saying, "We are closed." And they're just jobless immediately, without warning. So that's just not great at all.
That's super
Like,
fucked
the
up. That's
job
crazy.
security is just, yeah, it's really awful.
I was offered a job in the game industry back in like 2015, 2016, something like that, and I was really torn about it because I knew it was a job that was in a field I wanted to do, and it might have been a foot in the door. But at the same time, I thought I have great job security where I am now, and I would have no job security there. And it ended up being the person that a friend of mine that took the job that I was offered that I eventually I turned down. Um, he then went into a few months, basically a year, looking for a job. Some of it was actually while he was still employed with Microsoft, and he didn't find an immediate position. Then eventually he struggled and found a position down in San Francisco with HTC Vive, and then during the pandemic they dropped him. So it's a whole lot of instability with that field, and while it sounds like it's so much fun to be part of and all that stuff, it also sounds like it's incredibly stressful to be part of.
Yeah, for sure. And not to mention all the overtime that you need to do, especially in the VFX industry. It's just, it's not sustainable. It's really quite awful.
So it's kind of like they are saying, we're going to treat you like garbage because we know if you leave, then we'll have somebody else replace you.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's where the union would come in. So would it be, if there was a unionization, I'm wondering what it would look like. Would it be an industry wide thing, or would it be like a regional, like a local thing? How do you think that would work best?
I might not be the best person to ask, but in my head, I think it would be great for industry wide for Canada, maybe. Sorry, it's a lot of half-baked ideas, but
No,
that
that's
yeah,
the
that's how
fun
I
part
think.
about it. Yeah, is like in a conversation like this, just sort of like brainstorming. This was not a planned part of the conversation, so it's great to just kind of like have it like spontaneously crop up. um I know what unions are, and I know that people like having them, but when it comes to like an industry specific thing like that, yeah, I'm really curious about it to know like how that would
Yeah.
work, because I know that there's like the Screen Actors Guild, and for actors, but I don't know how far that reaches in terms of like, is it all actors in the whole world can be part of that, or is it just like, is that just a Hollywood thing? I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe we could just start small, um, region per region, but I think at least ideally, if it becomes countrywide, nationwide, I think that would be very cool because then it's really standardized and companies will really have to follow the rules. Uh, yeah. And also, I wanted to touch on why people don't want unions. I remember having some conversations with colleagues of mine on why they feel like unions are a bad idea. And it is because they do like the work that comes from US companies. So they do like working on big Disney IPs, big Warner Brothers IPs like Marvel, Star Wars. They like working on those big titles. But again, in my opinion, for the long run, I think it's not sustainable.
So if you were part of a union in Canada, you wouldn't be able to work on like American projects?
The reason why they say that is because it might be more expensive for those US companies to give us the service or for us to give them the service because the big reason why they come to Canada, they look into Canada to give out work, is because the tax evasion. Is it evasion?
More money
Tax
laundering.
deduction. I'm not sure if it's laundering, but they just want to pay lower taxes, and it's cheaper to hire us in Canadian dollars. Yeah.
It's all about the money.
It's money laundering of a type, in a way.
Yeah, I've lost track of the meaning now.
Right, it's like
Yeah.
white collar money laundering. It's like,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. That notion of get cheaper labor in Canada, because usually you think about that, they're like outsourcing to India or Vietnam, or somewhere like in the quote developing world, but no, Canada gets that too, huh?
Yeah. We get most of it, I think.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is, I don't know, this is a parallel to the pricing conversation that we have on this podcast a lot, where it's like people actively holding on to their lower prices because they think that they won't get paid as much, or it's like, well, people can't afford it. If I raise my prices, then all these other people won't be able to afford it, or I won't get work. And now this is like a whole industry that's doing that. Like, no, we need to get that Marvel money, so we can't raise our prices. But
Yeah, exactly.
Or even the prestige that they're seeing. Like it could be that they like the IPs. Like I grew up watching Star Wars and I want to make Star Wars stuff, but that's basically in a way paying Disney so that you can work for them because you're taking less.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned a couple of things between the theme park gig and where you're at now. There have been a couple of iterations. This jumping from career, well, not from career to career, but from occupation,
job.
having different jobs within sort of like the same general career. Sort of like more the standard in this space than not. It's interesting, because you think about other job searches and companies that want to see stability, but in this sort of situation, it's almost like they anticipate everybody anticipates that you're going to have a whole number of jobs before you get to the one that you're applying for. Is that fun for you? Do you like the sort of the variety, the opportunity for variety and unexpected opportunity? Or are you just like, God, I wish that I could just like get the job that I'm going to like retire doing?
I think it is very fun for me. But I also, I feel like I have the privilege to say that because I have been pretty lucky to have a loving family who will take me in at any time if ever I needed. I know not everyone has that option. So it's very, I don't know. I like it because of the variety of jobs I've had. I've learned a lot from each job. And I'm more like a person who likes to dabble in everything. So not only do I want to do concept art for environments, I want to do concept art for creatures, for characters, for props and vehicles. I want to design, the whole thing. So that kind of leads me to my job now because I'm currently art directing a mobile game. And because we are a startup, I am the only 2D artist on the team. So not only am I art directing, I'm also the concept artist, and I'm also designing the UI, the look of the UI. And I'm doing graphic design.
Oh my God,
So
this
I'm
sounds like a
wearing
lot
many
more
hats.
sleepless nights and overworking yourself.
It is and it isn't because I really enjoy doing everything. It's just I think I just love the challenge of it all. Just see how much I can not how much I can push myself, but just how to find ways to do this task that I think will be easy, like procedural. So yeah, it really helps that I know some 3D. So for example, our app is a storytelling, like a novel, interactive novel, and I was tasked with making book covers. So it was part of my job to find a process to make covers instead of hiring artists to meticulously paint every single one of them. And our game is 3D, so it's easier to find a way to make a procedural process to make book covers. Yeah, and I learned a lot from that, like post processing in Unity.
Yeah, tell us more about that. You had mentioned that you had to learn Unity on the fly right away. Like day one, they're like, okay, fucking go to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
almost right away.
what's that been like? Because Unity, for anybody that doesn't know, you can fill in the blanks that I leave out. Unity is a game development engine like Unreal Engine, the the software that actually lets you build the visual scape of the game. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. Unity is just not just, it is a engine to help build video games. Um, so what they did was they hired me knowing that I have some 3D knowledge and that I'm able to uh, learn things on my own because we're like a group of people who just um, learn as we go along and are open to learning more programs or what we need to make a game and have fun. So when what they needed me to do as a art director is I provide direction to our 3D artists. So I need to learn how to, first of all, open Unity, um, open our assets, so like the environments, the characters, be able to look at it in game and in the engine to see how far we need to push to get my visual um, design to push the assets to where I want them to look visually. And then that just evolved to a little bit more than that.
So I know with Unity, it does also handle animations. Did
Uh-huh.
you have to figure out how to use animations inside of Unity to connect them to what you wanted them to do?
Yeah, so we actually hired a animator. So we hired a rigger who provided us with a character rig and then an animator to do the animations for us. So it's Unity is pretty, I want to say it's pretty easy to use because it has a little tray system where you can just click and drag your files into the program. So it's easy in that aspect. Um, I would say it's pretty user friendly, but there is a lot to learn. So I think if you know Maya, I think it's a little bit similar to Maya in where you have so many menus to keep track of. And just you kind of need to know the 3D pipeline. So like modeling, surfacing, texturing, post-processing, just the basics to kind of be aware of, oh, maybe I think I know where the FOV is for the camera and how to set camera settings as well. Um, yeah, I think that's helpful.
Yeah, so it's
How,
kind of like knowing what to look for. You
Yeah,
know what
exactly.
you know enough to know what you don't know to in order to go look for where to find it, because that's what I was having a hard time conceptualizing when you
Hmm.
mentioned that you were learning Unity on the fly, where it's just like, god, you just, because that's not like a small learning curve. Like if somebody just stepped into that with no sort of background knowledge, it'd be like,
Hmm.
what the hell is even happening? But I
Yeah.
guess if you have like all of that sort of substrate of previous experience, then you at least know the terminology, and a lot of the like
You know,
environment. Yeah.
you know what to Google if you can't find something.
I was going to
That
ask, where did you search most? Did you look mostly on YouTube, Google, through the official help documents? What was the first go-to there? What was the most helpful overall?
Um, Most helpful were my colleagues because they, like the developers, they know Unity quite well, so I was able to ask them where things were. But also when I was trying to figure out the Unity recorder, trying to take rendered shots from the cameras in Unity, I had to uh, refer to a YouTube video to help me with that. Sometimes it's several YouTube videos to get a better grasp of the options in which I could go, directions. Yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah,
It's a mix.
I've always found like the built-in help menu stuff, like the things, the help documents that they produce themselves. They're
Oh, for
written for people.
sure.
They're written for people who already know what they're doing. Is the problem? So if you don't already know what you're doing, then YouTube will like
Mm.
bring you to the part where you can start asking the help document what it is. But if you actually read it by itself, it's kind of like reading ancient hieroglyphics. It doesn't sink in.
Yeah, no, sometimes the help documents really help, especially for the basic things that I was trying to figure out. Um, I know when I was learning Maya, that was what I referred to the most was just the help documents for Maya. That's also how I was taught by my teacher in college. So, um, yeah, but YouTube videos help so much because not only do you see the visual, but you can like see their cursor move to where you need to go, and, like keeping track of the steps. Yeah, it's nice.
But then when the version of the engine changes and they relocate where the stuff is, you're like, all right, I'm gonna click over here. I'm gonna go to this menu. There's no, I don't see that option in here anywhere. I'm stuck now forever.
Hopefully not forever. That's when I go to Google. Where is create edge loop in Maya 2021?
It used to be under edit, and now it's under options.
Yeah. Yeah.
well, even having a background to know how to orient yourself, it still seems like a kind of a big ask for a company to hire somebody that doesn't know a program, and then they have to like kind of step right into it and learn it on the fly. um One, I'd like to know like how fast you like had to get up to running speed, and two, like when you're going into an interview and maybe like I see oftentimes on a job application, it's like must be familiar with blah 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 Unity. So when you're applying for this job, you're like, well, I don't know Unity. How do you overcome that barrier between you and the company to say like, hey, I'm still hireable?
Um, I'm not sure about this one because they hired me already thinking that I knew Unity. And so for my first day on the job, they're like, "So you know Unity, right?" I'm like, "No, but you hired me." But I'll try my best. Uh,
That's awesome.
so that's what really happened. um, yeah, I think it really depends on the company. Because we are a startup, a lot of us are self-taught in the programs that we use. So even the developers, they are also self-taught. And so because they saw my character as self-taught, because I self-taught myself in Blender, they kind of see sort of that personality characteristic in me. So they just threw their trust at me for some reason.
And you were the
No.
only artist, so they didn't have anyone else as a fallback. They're like, oh, well, we got the artist that doesn't know Unity. I guess they have to learn Unity now.
Yeah, exactly. But hey, it worked out, I think.
Now I'm curious, like, how did you get linked up with this job? How did you find it?
They contacted me.
Okay.
Yeah, so actually, when I started at my previous job, they had contacted me with this vague description of the job, and I'm like, I'm good. I just got hired, so I'm gonna stay here for maybe a year. And then a year after, they contacted me again, and that was when they offered me the art director title. So I'm like, whoa. Like I knew I always wanted to be an art director someday. I didn't know that I would be given this opportunity so soon in my career, but it was just something I couldn't say no to. And I'm very glad that I got this job because it's very, very fun. Um, Tickles the brain because I have a lot of learning to do. Uh, so that's part of the fun part, and I really like my coworkers.
So when I hear the term title art director, I think you have like some minions to control, and they do your art bidding. But you are the key artist. You're the sole artist on this. So do you just like boss yourself around, or what's this art direction going on here?
Yeah, I do have to boss myself around. Because if one of my paintings isn't up to par, I'm like, oh my goodness, how are the 3D artists going to interpret this? You need to do better. uh,
Are you
um,
redlining your own paintings and stuff?
yeah, I am. I give myself little notes. I'm like, do this, but better. um, but no, so one of my main jobs is to provide art direction for the 3D artists because it is a 3D video game. So that's truly where what I do. Um, and now I do more.
I also have the preconceived notion that art director means send like have artists that are not working for the company send them your resume so that they can hire you as basically the outsourcing art director or art manager. Is that the case in every art director position? Like, is that something that you do? Like, do you have to field resumes from people that have never talked to you before? They just cold send you their resumes for work?
um, uh, wait, repeat that. Are you saying that I need to send my resume?
No. Like, so I think when
Sorry.
when I hear somebody is an art director, I think, all right, I'm gonna have my friends send them their resumes and their portfolios to get work from that
Oh,
art director, as if art
oh.
directors are all also are outsourcing art managers. Is that so? It's not the case here.
No, so art directors tend to have excuse me, a say on who will be hired by the company to be on their team. But for my case, I haven't yet uh, been given that power only because we are a small team and we are not looking for more artists currently. But I had the opportunity to recommend someone to do some art consultations for our project. So that was something.
So when it goes from startup to AA, AAA,
hmm
then you'll be in that position to be like, all right, we got to hire some more talent here, and then you start looking around for that.
Yeah, hopefully. But it also comes down to the actual director of the project, and also the what are they called? Money managers, financial. Sorry, I'm losing my words.
The money side of the business, yeah.
Yeah, the money
The
side of the
Honduran
business.
drug lords.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna take a minute to turn my AC on. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. We'd like to take this moment to thank our sponsors, AAA Heating and Air Conditioning.
And I would say that we can remove this from the VOD, but every time we've said it before, we ended up not removing it from the VOD. So
Not every time. I think it's happened twice.
well,
So maybe every time.
All right, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Hopefully, no one can see how sweaty I am.
No, you shouldn't have said anything. Now people are like really leaning into yeah, gotta get it. Magnifying glass.
I'll move
Scoot
a
back.
little further away from the webcam.
It does seem pretty awesome though, because it seems like a company that you could grow with. Like if it continues and it, knock on wood, it maintains and keeps putting out content, you could really be a part of this for a while. That's pretty awesome. That's a score.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this project. I hope many people will play our game and say, "Wow,
Yeah,
I like this game."
Is there a lot of NDA stuff around it, or can you talk about it?
Yeah, I can't talk about it currently, but we're trying to release it either late this summer or in the fall.
So the final stretch.
Yeah.
Well, be sure to let me know, let us know when that does happen, because we'll go back and re-edit the show notes so that we can put, make a connection to that, make links to that and stuff.
At the very least, when it does come up on Steam, I'm assuming, then we can put it up on when it's available for waitlist.
Yeah. It's on mobile, so it'll be in the
That's
Apple
right.
Store or in the Google Play Store.
Gotcha. Yep.
In the games development space in particular, it seems like 2D artist and 3D artist, that line is blurring a lot. If you're a 2D artist, it almost seems expected that you're going to have some 3D ability somewhere. Is that just sort of like the standard expectation now? Like if you're a 2D artist, are you just going to have to know a bit of Blender or Maya or something as well?
I don't think it's gonna be expected. I think if a company is gonna hire a 2D artist, they won't expect you to know 3D. But I have heard that it's just helpful depending on the industry you want to get into, and also how quick the client will need the turnaround for. So if you're working in the film industry, I know that it's very helpful to know a little bit of 3D. But otherwise, I don't think it's expected at all, especially for concept art.
Well, that's good to know because it seems like that's maybe it's just
certainly the trend. I think it's a trend right now, and it is. I think it is helpful in certain ways. But if it's totally not your thing, don't feel pressured to go in that route.
Well, it also seems too that like 2D art. Well, I shouldn't say it seems like this, because this could just be paranoia talking or delusions of, future scenarios that 2D art just like won't exist in the future. Like they're not going to do it anymore. It's going to like VR is going to take over. Like everything's going to be 3D, and no one's going to want to look at boring flat images anymore.
No, I wouldn't say that. I think there's something very special and magical in 2D art and 2D productions. And I think a lot of companies are trying to revive the magic of it, because there's just something about 2D animation that is so special, that you can't really get in a 3D animation, I would say. It's just that human touch, if you know what I mean.
It's also
And
a little bit of
yeah,
uncanny valley, right? So if you try to make
yeah, exactly.
more realistic, then you end up making it look kind of fake in the process.
Yeah, for sure. I see it a lot in some indie games nowadays, how they're trying to get that 2D feel in a 3D video game. Like I was watching what's it called? Disco Elysium. Uh, yeah, that game is gorgeous, and it's a 3D game, but they textured it and yeah, they textured it in a way and lit it in a way that makes it look 2D. And I think it's just very beautiful. And I think if we start doing more of a blend like that, I think there will always be a call for 2D artists.
And
Huh.
then there's similar games like Ori and the Blind Forest. Those were also 3D games that were made look explicitly 2D. Like they
Mhm.
even like basically broke the character's arms so that it would appear to be 2D when it was actually 3D. So you see like, the arm is actually like bent like this, but in the proper perspective, it looks like it's just like a normal wrapped arm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Then you have games like Bloodstained Ritual of the Night and the new Metroid Dread game, which, because they're using a perspective camera instead of an orthographic camera, it looks like you're playing that inside of a shoebox.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for that.
Not being
It's gonna be
as
so good.
not being as familiar with the gaming world, but because I have a 3.5-year-old, being very familiar with the children's cartoons world, I'm thinking of like Giganosaurus and like all of these cartoons that he watches that have that happening in there too. But there's artists behind that too, so that's, I guess,
Yeah,
that
for
kind of goes
sure.
with what you're saying as well. When you're in the studio, like what's your favorite part of that pipeline? You're talking about doing everything now, so I guess your answer is like all of it. But if you had to pick one part of the process that you would want to do, what's your favorite?
My favorite will always be designing the look. So I really enjoy so my current process, although it changes from time to time depending on what I'm trying to design, I would sketch out my ideas first in Photoshop, and that way I have a general idea of what I'm aiming for when I go into Blender and try to do a quick mock-up of my designs. And then because I can't really use cycles rendering on my computer for now, it's really slow. I use Eevee rendering, but I found this script that helps make the lighting look a little closer to reality, not quite. Um, I render that out, put it back into Photoshop, and paint over it. So that's my current favorite process and my favorite thing to do, is just uh, starting a mock-up in Blender, because I love modeling, and then finishing up a painting that I'm happy with and I like the design and hopefully gets my team excited. I think that's the best part of my job is to just hear my teammates go, "Whoa!"
Yeah, that's got to be satisfying, right?
Yeah.
You can also just get the cheap, fulfilling. Maybe it's less fulfilling, but you could throw in some jump scares, so you get that excitement that way.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully we can get some horror elements in our video game. I think it would be really cool. I wish I could talk about it more, but I don't think I really can. But yeah, there's also at some points inserting in some inside jokes of ours inside the art. So that's really fun.
And I know you've talked to a little bit about getting into 3D, or not 3D, VR. And we've been talking so much about 3D, it's like everything is 3D. But yeah, you've been doing some stuff with VR and sculpting with VR. That this is something that I'm really excited about. Hypothetically, because I say that as I have this fucking Oculus that's been sitting on my floor unwrapped in the box for like months now, and it just looks at me every day and it's like, dude, when are you gonna do this? What are you waiting for? Just because I'm like that. But nonetheless, I think about it and I'm like, that's gonna be so awesome. What's your experience been like with it? Get me hyped up. Make me unwrap the box. What are you doing with it?
So, to tell you the truth, I also haven't touched my VR headset in a while, but I'm still very excited about it because there's so many things I want to try with it. Endless possibilities and opportunities with it. So what I like about VR is that it's just it's such a different feeling when you're painting in VR. So I mainly use this program called Quill, mainly because it's free. You are able to create a painting inside of it and animate it, and to make all these cool scenes in it with different methods. I'm currently in a VR Discord where we share a lot of different ways of using Quill and achieving a certain look and a certain animation, because there's a lot of professional animators who do VR animation in it, and it's just it feels so intuitive to be able to paint in 3D space. So you no longer have that detachment where you're drawing or sculpting on a 2D surface. You're actually in the 3D space and you're creating something, and it's just so freeing, and it's just it feels so natural. Well, especially when you get used to the tools, it just feels very natural and free flowing. And it's just such a fun way to be creative, basically.
You talked earlier about using Blender to do quick mock-ups and doing paintovers of that in Photoshop. Have you been doing the same thing with VR sculpting? And then well, I'm curious about a couple of things. Do you export your VR models into Blender or another modeling program, or do you just can you take a snapshot like in program and then send that right to Photoshop?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do that. So I haven't done this yet. I have yet to try it, but a lot of bigger concept artists have been using VR to get like a very quick sketch of a 3D model, and then they would export the FBX into Blender or whatever 3D program that they want to use. Do whatever lighting adjustments that they want, render that, and put it into Photoshop and paint over it. And that's a very quick and easy way for them. I know some concept artists at ILM who have started that trend. So I think some artists at ILM have really integrated that process into their work. And it's just, yeah, it's really cool to just sculpt things really quickly in 3D space. And then you throw it into 3D program, throw it into Photoshop, and bam, you have a concept. Obviously, it's not as easy as how I described it just there, but it's really cool.
You mentioned a few minutes ago a Discord server for people who are interested in VR art. Is that a public Discord, or is that something that you have to know somebody to get in, because otherwise it might be open to the unwashed masses, and that might bring down the server?
No, it's fairly open. So how you can find it is actually through Facebook, because I know unfortunately Oculus and Quill is very integrated into Facebook. What was it? I think Facebook bought them or something. I can't remember. Don't quote me on this.
Yeah, Facebook
but
bought
anyways,
Oculus.
it started as a Facebook group. Yeah, so it's called VR Animation, I think. And the person who runs it, there's several people who run it, but the main person who runs it is Goro. Sorry, I'm forgetting his last name.
We can find it, but in the show notes after, it's fine.
Sure, it's Goro Fujita. He mainly organizes it, and they have a stream every weekend just to show off new processes, new techniques. And it's just a really great and fun community to be a part of. So yeah, if you join their Facebook group, then you can get a invitation to join the Discord group.
So you were saying that artists are taking their VR sculpts and then sending them to a 3D modeling platform to do like some lighting and rendering. Are there not VR sculpting programs that will do like complex lighting or rendering like the same way that you can in Blender?
Yeah, no. So one of the programs that I mentioned, Quill, you have to paint in the lighting. There's no lighting at all in that program. And then there is another sculpting program that I know of is called Adobe Medium. That's what some of the ILM artists do or use for their sculpting. It's just a different way, a faster way to sculpt something, because Quill is more of a painting program, and then Adobe Medium is more of a sculpting program, so you can get more finer details in your sculpts and make your sculpt as big as probably not as big as possible, because I think it still runs on like a mobile platform. I might be wrong on this. Again, don't quote me. I haven't dabbled in it yet, but soon, I hope. Yeah, and they can take that FBX file, you can export it as FBX and put it into a 3D program and light it.
I'm curious, have you ever dabbled in Dreams on the PlayStation?
No, I haven't. I've heard about it though.
I'm just mentioning because some of my friends that were in the Project Spark community, they have since moved over to Dreams because Project Spark doesn't exist anymore.
Oh.
But I had heard that there was a way to export objects from Dreams and import them into like Blender, whatever other 3D platform you wanted. But since I haven't been doing it, since I don't have PlayStation 4 or 5, I was curious if you had, but
no,
evidently
I
not.
haven't.
So that's a dead end to that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I'm not sure if. Yeah, no worries. I'm not sure if Medium has a rendering program in it. That's why I'm not sure if you could probably just take a screenshot from it, but I think that's why most people will import it to another 3D program. I know there's another program called Tilt Brush. That one has cool lighting effects that you can implement in your scenes. I don't know too much more, so yeah, that I think
I
that's
think Tilt Brush
about all.
is Google based. Am I wrong?
Okay.
I remember
I'm
they have
not
Google
sure.
Blocks and Tilt, and they work
Yeah.
together to some extent.
Yeah, all I remember seeing is a lot of cool tilt brush scenes where they do like flashing light. It looks like a nightclub, and there's like volumetric lighting as well in it, and pretty cool, pretty flashy, and very fun.
We were talking a
I
minute ago.
considered using my VR. I think we were out of sync in this episode where I don't see people talking until after their audio kicks in. Anyway.
Yeah, I see a long delay between your lips. It's like this is like a real badly dubbed movie where your talk is way off. This is weird. I've never seen this happen before.
Oh no.
It's happened before once, but it wasn't that this bad. But, oh well, it's okay. We've made it through.
What I was going to say is talking a little bit earlier about how like 3D displacing 2D maybe not going to happen, but VR it seems like that's just going to swallow everything. Like I don't know how long it's going to take, but it can't be too long before we all just live in VR.
Oh my god. Yeah, like already I see the developers I'm working with, they both have VR headsets and they have their desktop set up in VR. So sometimes they'd be sitting on their couch doing their work in VR. It's pretty cool.
See, it's already happening.
I have to admit. I know, it's already happening.
But you can also look like a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a alien, or you could be doing your work while sitting in the asteroid belt. I mean, of course this will happen. How can it not? People will still be doing 2D paintings. Yeah, people will still be doing 2D paintings, but they'll be doing it wherever your imagination can possibly take you. I'm painting on Pluto today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that's the magic of VR chat. If you've ever been exposed to that, just having a chat room wherever you want. That's another thing that I learned from the VR Discord I'm in. There has been a process developed for sketching a 3D space or 3D scene in Quill, putting it into Unity, and have things be where you can interact with, and then putting it into VR chat, and all your friends can come into your scene that you've built and interact with these objects that you've programmed, and it's really cool.
Yeah, or have collaborations, like have
that too, yeah.
The Exquisite Corpse of like a VR version. Have you ever played that game, Exquisite Corpse?
No, I haven't.
Oh, this is so cool. I get to tell two people about it. So you start with like a piece of paper and you fold it into thirds. So you can only see like 1/3 of it, and you draw like the head, and then you pass it to the next person, or you fold it over so that then the next person only sees the next third, and they draw the torso, and then the next person draws like the hindquarters and the tail or whatever.
Oh my god, that was our favorite activity actually in my previous job. All the artists would just like do that constantly and make several weird monster characters. And we'd give them names.
Yes, what were some of the names?
Oh my god, I can't remember now. There's like Mr. Fernagle Doodle or something like that. It's very far out there names.
How many of them were based on Pokemon?
None. Yeah, I know.
Disappointing.
You
How
know,
can you call yourself an anime fan?
I just know that not everyone is an anime fan, so I try to respect that.
Yeah, so anyway, the VR version of Exquisite Corpse, like that's I don't know exactly how you would hide part of it from the next person working. Like there's a lot of from here to there to get over, but that's gonna be fucking awesome.
Yeah.
If somebody isn't already doing it, I'm sure it's got to be getting done.
Yeah, that's got to be a thing.
Well, this is good. This has gotten me back into. I'm gonna move it from like underneath my desk to at least like the top of my desk, and we'll see how much longer it stays wrapped up.
Yeah, little baby steps.
But switching gears just a little bit, we wanted to touch on your experience with COVID as somebody working in studios. Did the studio continue work, or I don't know if you were at this current job during the or during the quarantine, but wherever you were you able to like keep working in that occupation just remotely, or did things have to slow down a lot? What was that like?
Ooh, where to begin? So when the pandemic first hit, that was the biggest struggle, especially for the studio that I was at. So the pandemic hit when I was still working at my previous job, and with that studio, we were sharing the same space with another studio, which was a big VFX studio that works for really big titles like Marvel and Disney. So the security for them had to be the same for us. So because of that, we weren't able to work um, locally in a network sense. We had to remote into our work computers and try to work that way. For other departments, it was fairly easy transition. For the artists, not so much because some some of the technologies that we had to work with didn't allow for, say, pen sensitivity. That was the biggest one. Another one was just how are we going to share the stuff, the work that we're working on. Um, so like the animators needed to because sometimes there's a lag, there's a latency. They can't lip sync to the voices, and it was just hard to match for lip syncing. So then they needed like a secure way to move files around so that they can have it locally. Um, there's a whole bunch of other issues, but so we worked very closely with IT. Yeah, the IT department. They were working like 24/7. I felt so bad for them. They sometimes had to live in the studio. Like they still had to go into the studio to take care of all the servers and also help us with IT stuff. Sometimes they were able to work from home, but that was something very tough for them because they're like juggling everybody's demands, and sometimes it would take days or weeks to get something fixed for us to continue working. Thankfully for the concept artists, we found ways to just, I mean, our job was to just make paintings, just concept art. So we managed to just have like mouse painted concept art. But yeah, it Sounds like a nightmare, but we made it work. We used the lasso tool. We used like whatever we could to make these paintings, and at the end of the day, as long as it conveyed what we needed it to convey, it was good. Um, it was much more harder for the 3D department, though, I'd have to say. And then for my current job, well, actually, back on my previous job, I was put on another project. I worked a little bit on the new Space Jam film, and that was something really hard to do, especially with the lack of pen sensitivity. So I actually had to make some brushes to kind of emulate pen sensitivity to get that natural painterly look. So I did a little bit of that, but I only worked briefly on the film, and that was when I was actually hired as the art director position during COVID. So that was a little bit weird, but I didn't mind it because we did the interview through Google Teams, Teams meeting, and I was onboarded in a similar way, so we didn't have to see each other, and uh, yeah, it was a pretty smooth process, I think. So for this project, I am able to work locally in a network sense. So that was a big plus for me, and I'm able to continue working remotely for them.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there's
So
been.
I think
Sorry,
I
go
think
ahead,
it's
Moose.
worth
Go
mentioning
ahead.
that Canada is behind the United States and maybe the UK in terms of vaccinations. So they're still in the midst of the pandemic. Whereas we in the United States are privileged to be able to say like we're past it, even though there's still a bunch of anti-vax people who refuse to get the shot and are proud about it on social media, including sports players on my team that I'm really upset with. Anyway, so let's just say like they're still in the midst of the pandemic in Toronto, so they're still under some element of lockdown there, right?
Yep.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So hopefully in Canada, I know we're trying to fast forward the second doses, the administration for the second doses. I think we have a better part of the country already having their first vaccination. So I'm hoping soon I could get my second dose. I know my family, the rest of my family has already gotten their second dose, so it's just a matter of time for me.
I know some studios and some companies, in spite of the anticipated return to quote normal life, after like vaccines are, more common than not, and things have kind of like settled down a little bit, they'll still offer the option of working remotely because they sort of like realize that there are some benefits to it, outside of just like the absolute necessity of having to because of a global pandemic. It's shown some other positive benefits. Will your studio still make that an option?
I think currently we will have to keep working remotely because technically we don't have a physical studio to go back to right now. So what I've heard from my coworkers is that they had acquired a new studio space for our department because we're kind of a sister department or sister company to a bigger animation studio, Tangent Animation. So I'm part of Tangent Interactive Media. So we had a space, but then the pandemic hit and then they weren't able to keep that space. So now we're just all working in our PJs from home. So yeah, we'll see if there will be a time where we head into an office or studio again. But I'm hoping that they will integrate a option system, like a option to work remotely for part of the week, and come into the studio for the other part of the week.
Awesome. Well, coming into our wrap up part of this thing, I wanted to know what your outlook on the future is. You have a great gig going for you now, it sounds like. Ride that till the wheels fall off, is my humble advice. But
Yeah.
you know, we've talked to a lot of artists that like to have their sort of personal projects going that help them. You seem so busy. Do you have time for personal work, or do you want that in the future?
My God, I'm so busy.
Yeah.
I have many ongoing personal projects. So my challenge is finding the time to work on them. So as I mentioned, I do want to go back into filling with VR and implementing that in my process. And also, Unreal Engine just came out with their new rendering system. I think I'm not familiar with the terms yet, but I've seen many of my friends making these gorgeous scenes in Unreal Engine with like a million bajillion polygons, and they're lighting it beautifully and are making these, yeah, just amazing art from it. So that's also something I would like to play with. Yeah.
So you have engine envy, is what you're saying.
A little bit. I have a little bit of FOMO, like, oh no, I want to get in on this action.
Just stop sleeping. That's what I'm working on. I haven't figured it out
I
yet,
know,
but
right?
yeah, every night I try and do 1 minute less. Maybe I can just acclimate my body to just not ever needing sleep. Moose is shaking his head. I guess that's not how it works. Okay, well, whatever. Flo, where would you like people to go to find your work and find out more about you?
Anywhere and everywhere. I have an Instagram, I have a Twitter, I have an ArtStation. I know I need to post more. I still do art. I still do personal art. I just haven't been posting. So
That's like the
yes,
call
yeah.
of the
I ask,
wild
please.
for every artist. That's the immediate apology that comes after anything social media related. I need to start posting more.
It's hard, okay?
I hear you.
I'm not going to beat up anybody about it.
Great, thanks, Moose.
Well, our trademark final question. Aside from personal projects or career related things, what's one thing in the world that you're excited about?
I'm excited about all the future space exploration that I've been reading about.
Tell us more.
So I don't know how recent it is, but there's a nearby solar system that has a planet. It's a dwarf sun. I'm forgetting all the terms now, but anyways,
Dwarf star.
there's dwarf star. Thank you. And there's a planet in that solar system that may or may not be similar to Earth. So I think we are sending a satellite over there to find out more about it and see if there's potential life on it. So that's something cool to think about.
But we have to go live on Mars first.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mars is overrated. But when you when you were going over your answers before the show, because we do provide the guests with a preliminary list of questions so they can jog their thoughts prior to being on with us, so they don't feel so on the hot seat. She wrote down space to answer this question. I was just reading it in my head as like Tim Curry in the Command and Conquer, where he goes, "I'm going to the one place that isn't corrupted by capitalism, space." So if you haven't seen that, just look up Tim Curry Space on YouTube and you'll enjoy it.
I don't have to. I love your Tim Curry impersonation.
That was half-hearted at best.
Well, Flo,
Sorry,
thank you so much for spending some time with us. This has been great. Your energy is great. The information has been wonderful, and we really appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Yay, thank you for having me. This was fun.
I'll wave goodbye before I hit end on the record here.